another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. I'm a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. And if you like all things true crime related from a police perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon when I go live or when I upload another video. Tonight, we are going to talk about the outline of the autopsy for Gabby Petito. I have tonight two distinguished guests. One you will recognize just from 2 shows ago, Edward Wallace, Crime Scene Unit, NYPD Retired Detective. He was with us just the other night. You guys all know and love Ed. And I also have Barbara Butcher, the Chief of Staff for the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. She's retired, and she is here to give us her professional, legal, medical, professional opinion on what could possibly be going on here with Gabby Petito and the report, the autopsy report. You guys all know and love her. This is Barbara Butcher. Thank you so much, Barbara, for taking out the time out of your busy schedule. Everybody knows that you have a wealth of information for the viewing audience, and I appreciate you coming in here.
Thank you, Ron. Always a pleasure.
We also have a good friend of yours and a colleague that worked with you. He is no stranger to the show because just Wallace, thank you so much for coming back into Crime Time with DutyRon. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
I started out at the New York City Medical Examiner's Office as a death investigator, medical legal death investigator, they're called here. And I've been in the business for 25 years. I retired out as the chief of staff after getting a couple of promotions in there.
Yeah.
And I still do consulting for private cases.
Well, I spent the majority of my career in the NYPD Crime Scene Unit, where I was a certified senior crime scene analyst. And I worked with Barbara as a medical legal death investigator on many crime scenes together. After 15 years and 2,000, close to 2,700 crime scenes investigated and given testimony in close to 400 trials as a forensic expert, I moved on to counterterrorism in the last year of my career on the NYPD. Retired out of there in 2004. And then I went to work with my own private forensic consulting company. And I have contracts with the State Department, the Defense Department, and I travel all around the world doing counterterrorism forensic work. I also teach for Louisiana State University, so go Tigers. I teach a forensics course and I teach emergency responders around the nation how to collect forensic evidence of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive materials. And then I went to work with Barbara at the Medical Examiner's Office in New York City in 2008 to run a forensics training course where we had obtained grants from the Department of Justice to train our nation's death investigators on how to do basic death investigations, advanced death investigations, and bloodstain pattern analysis.
Wow. I would hate to see the long version of that. You really get around. You got a great resume. You've done a lot of great stuff, and you know this is right up the alley of this Gabby Petito case. And Barbara, I want to jump in right away with you. I had your numbers of all the different investigations that you have. I think you corrected me. The last time I said it was 5,500, and you were like, I would have had to have 5 careers to do the 5,500.
No, it was 5,500 cases. 600 homicides.
Right, but I said 5,500 homicides, and I got it right. So she's investigated 5,500 death scenes. Okay, that means she's been out at the locations of over 5,500 death scenes in the New York City, in the 5 boroughs. She's also investigated 680 homicides. She was there investigating Flight 587. That was 265 deaths, and the DNA recovery at the World Trade Center. So she's instrumental in a lot of things, and Barbara was she left out some very important things that I had to highlight for you guys. Barbara, everybody wants to know, Gabby Petito, 22 years old. She was out potentially for over 20 days in Wyoming in the Teton National Park. Just could you give some of the viewing audience what kind of challenges you have as a medical examiner slash all the folks who are involved in that recovery. What are some of the things that they're up against there? And I'll show some pictures as you speak.
Okay. She was Gabby was found in the Moran Vista camp area, which is what they call a dispersed campground. In other words, it's has no facilities. It's not a place where you just pitch a tent and get water, showers, or electricity. This is very, very remote area, very wild area. Now, after 21 days, we all understand the nature of decomposition. And in addition, being a wild area, there are bobcats, cougars, all kinds of vermin. And, you have to be realistic about what kind of remains you'll be looking for. And the big challenge is to not just find those remains, but to find all the remains. You mentioned that the medical examiner's office had gone back a second time to the site, and that's most likely because they may have found that they were missing a bone or some such, and went back to see if they could find everything. That's just the realistic likely scenario here. I don't know exactly what her remains looked like, but after 21 days in the wilderness.
The lead agent in charge, before the body was removed and brought to the coroner, he gave his condolences to the Petito family, to the Schmidt family. I was a little taken back by that, but once I thought about it for a few moments, I said, there could be many variables that came into play there. Have you ever seen that go on in your time where condolences are given to a family? And if so, what are some of the identifying marks that could be on a human body, such as a 22-year-old girl who has been out there in the elements for a good 25 days?
You're right, Ron. It's not really correct to give condolences to a family until a positive, and I mean positive, identification is made. And a positive identification is not just viewing the body, because people can make mistakes, but DNA, fingerprints, or forensic odontology, where they compare dental records to the teeth that remain. That's a really good way to identify people because it's so unique, what work you may have had done. But of course, you have to know who you're looking at in order to get their dental records, or who you're looking for. So it is very unusual for the agent to have given condolences to a family without confirming an ID. Now, could they have the exact clothing that she was reported to be wearing? And could it be that there was ID in her pocket? Maybe her hair was, rather
right,
distinctive.
Right. Or I get what you're saying. Right. These are some of the things that we've all gone through in our heads. And now most of the folks, can come to that, realization that there could be some identifying marks. But we talked about, and many people had conversations about the tattoos. What's the odds of tattoos still being visible in a decedent 20 some odd days out in the elements like that?
This you can have the skin tends to slough off in decomposition. So the top layers of skin would likely be gone. It is possible in flesh, in muscle, or in fat cells to see the ink of a tattoo. Sometimes you have to use an alternate light source, which Ed can tell you all about, to light up the various pigments in a tattoo. But again, we're talking about, possible animal activity here. We don't really know.
Ed, you spoke about on our last getting together on the last stream, You talked about, recreating the crime scene and going through from the vehicle on the road to the 250 yards, which is a substantial it's a substantial distance going 250 yards from the van to the place where she was recovered. What type of recreation would you do as a crime scene investigator from like a potential route? And how would they even determine what the potential route is? Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Well, it wouldn't be a recreation per se. What you would do is you would start off at where we know the van was,
Mhm.
okay, and then you could do a series of searches, line searches with. You would require a lot of police officers or forensic experts, anthropologists, or whatever the case may be, a coordinated effort to search from that vehicle the paths that would lead to where the body was found. And then along that path, you would be searching, as I said the last time, for footwear impressions, drag marks, possible blood trails if blood was let. You would also be looking for what we call sign, such as maybe a piece of the victim's or the suspect's clothing got snagged on some of the plant life in that area there, and fibers were torn off and left behind. And again, there's a thing we call it Lacard's exchange principle. So what it says is anytime two objects come in contact and then separate, they're going to transfer bits and pieces of each other to each other and of the scene, that their presence were at the scene. And so when they leave, they bring the scene with them and they leave their presence at the scene. So you would look along those lines. You would see, look for broken branches, twigs. You would look for pieces of material, fibers, maybe discarded jewelry or things from the hair or things of that nature. And you would try to establish how they got from the van to where they deposited the body. Was he carrying the body? Was he dragging the body?
Right. Do we look for drag marks, like a drag, like like a foot that would drag on the floor or on the dirt? Would you be looking for things like that?
I could have done that. Could have used a blanket and dragged the victim in a blanket along the ground if he wasn't strong enough to carry her. Or he could have wrapped her in the blanket and had her over her shoulder. There's any number of ways that he could have transferred, or she could have walked there on her own, as you said earlier. And this is where she was murdered. So there's any number of things, but again, the only way you're going to know, even with the 21-day lapse, is you have to go out there and you have to look for these things.